It is your prisonplanet.tv memberships that fund so much of what we do here on this operation. And then we're more than happy for the TV show after it's aired live, then be leaked out onto the web to tens of millions of people. That's our goal.
Welcome to the Alex Jones Show. It is Monday, June 3rd, 2013. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, filling in for Alex today, who is in the UK. He has successfully arrived there. They did not kick him out of the country. At least I haven't heard about it. If they did, and I'm sure we'd be the first to hear. So he's there getting ready for the Bilderberg conference, and he's going to be joining us, in fact, in the second hour today, calling in, also joined by David Icke in the second hour. In fact, today is a show that's just packed with great personalities. We've got Gerald Celente hosting the third hour, and I'm just here for the first hour to get things rolling. So breaking news today on Drudge. In fact, Drudge is linking to this right now. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that police can take DNA swabs from arrestees. Just like taking your fingerprints, they can now take your DNA. We're going to talk about this during the first hour of the Alex Jones Show here, why this is such a big deal. It means that the government can take your DNA essentially anytime they want and enter it into a database that will be used against you. Now, every power that we give to the federal government turns out to be used against us in ways that never could have been imagined by our founding fathers. So this is a very disturbing decision by the Supreme Court. And it was a sharply divided court that made this decision. There were 4 dissenting justices who said that the court was allowing police to have a significant change, a significant expansion in police powers. So we're going to talk about that. But it turns out that your DNA, this is the big story really, your DNA is now claimed to be owned by the federal government. And they can do anything they want with it. In fact, there have been cases still happening right now where medical science has ripped off the DNA of patients and used it to create cancer tumors that they use for experimental purposes to study anti-cancer drugs, and they never pay that patient any kind of royalty, and they don't intend to. So we've got that story coming up. Also, the official Bilderberg attendee list has been released, and this is posted right now on Infowars.com. We've got the full list. We're going to break down for you some of the big names who that are on that list, because it is a big deal. Remember, the Bilderberg Conference is something that was called a conspiracy theory just a few years ago. They said it doesn't exist, even though it does, just like the ammo purchases by DHS. It doesn't exist. It's a conspiracy theory that they're buying ammo, but they are buying ammo, but it's not for you. It's not to be used against you. That's the explanation now. In addition to that story, we've got this story, the Al Gore backlash, why environmentalists are celebrating rising CO2 levels. And to explain that later today on the show, I brought some science flashcards with me here, right there, to explain to you a little bit about the table of elements and why carbon dioxide is a nutrient, not a pollutant. Why plants and forests and gardens need carbon dioxide. That's argon we're showing you right there. Let's find something else. Oh, hydrogen. Yeah, isn't that wonderful? We're going to go through a little bit of a science lesson, which I know you'll enjoy because it has pictures and flashcards. Just a little flashback to high school. Yeah, your favorite time, science class, right? Anyway, we're going to explain all that right here on the Alex Jones Show. And in addition to that, we're covering the other news that's breaking today. We've got 2/3 of Americans don't know if they will insure under Obamacare because, of course, Obamacare, which promised to make your health insurance more affordable, is actually making it more expensive by far. In fact, Californians are expected to pay 146% more for their health insurance premiums under Obamacare, and other states are paying or going to pay up to 400% more for health insurance under Obamacare. Gee, it's called the Affordable Care Act, but no one can afford it. All that and much more straight ahead as we continue here on the Alex Jones Show. Stay with us. All right, it's Monday, June 3rd, 2013, here on the Alex Jones Show. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, filling in for Alex today. Alex is in the UK, getting ready to break down the Bilderberg conference. And as a journalist, a news reporter, I don't mean break it down. I don't mean like bash the doors in. No, I mean he's there to cover it. And by the way, if you want to watch the live coverage here on InfoWars, just go to Infowars.com/B, as in Bilderberg. Got it? Infowars.com/B is the website where all the live coverage is going to be happening. And Alex Jones is there. We've got other InfoWars reporters there. Richard Reeves is on location right now. Of course, Paul Joseph Watson, who lives there, is there. We've also got, I heard Luke Rudowski is there covering it from We Are Change, and many other people, so expect a lot of interesting reports to come out of the Bilderberg conference all this week, and Infowars.com is the headquarters where you're going to get the most information on that, more than any other news source in the world. And by the way, we have the official Bilderberg attendee list, and it includes, this is breaking news, this is the attendee list was just released. It includes Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon.com, the vice chairman of Goldman Sachs. Gee, we didn't expect that one. Michael Evans. The former Secretary of the Treasury, Timothy Geithner. Gee, there's another big unexpected name. The General of the U.S. Army, David Petraeus. Yeah, I'm starting to see a pattern here. Eric Schmidt, the chairman of Google. There's another big name. And a lot of other names. But, gee, according to the mainstream media, all these people are going to a meeting that doesn't exist. Gee, do you think Jeff Bezos and Eric Schmidt and General Petraeus would all go to a meeting that doesn't exist? Really? No, they're going to the Bilderberg meeting, which does exist, and it's not a conspiracy theory. It is a meeting of some of the most influential and powerful and maybe power-hungry people around the world who are getting together to talk about how they're going to run the world, how they're going to influence the world. They're going to shape policy and control people and probably depopulate the planet, has been one of the topics that's been talked about in the past. But certainly they want to own the planet. So probably the big topic this year, this is just my personal conjecture on the topic, is to figure out how can they crash the global debt markets in a way that transfers all the wealth from the hands of the working class into the hands of the ultra-wealthy elite, who are primarily the people at the meeting. How can they make that crash happen so that it just crashes in their direction? That's probably the big topic, but we'll see. So watch Infowars.com all week long and listen to the Alex Jones Show for updates on that. Now, big breaking news from the U.S. Supreme Court, just breaking this morning, in fact, and this is the top headline on Drudge this morning. Drudge says, ruled, take their DNA. The U.S. Supreme Court has issued a ruling that allows police across the country to take your DNA when they arrest you, to swab your DNA involuntarily on your part. They just take it from you essentially by force. In the same way that they take your fingerprints, they're now going to take your DNA. Well, why is this a big deal? And why did 4 of the justices at the U.S. Supreme Court have dissenting opinions warning about the expansion of police powers? This is a big deal because it essentially says that the U.S. government claims ownership over your DNA. Now, here's why that really matters. Number one, your DNA is unique and it's supposed to be yours. It's supposed to be private. It's part of your biology. It's part of your body. It's an intimate part of your body. Why can the government just take that from you? And if the government can take it from you, what can they do with it? Now, here's where it gets really scary. You're probably aware of the gene hypothesis of disease, right? You've heard of Angelina Jolie having a double mastectomy because she carried a gene mutation called the BRCA1 or the BRCA2 gene, BRCA1 and 2 genes that are associated with an increased risk of breast cancer. This hypothesis is wrong. Your genes do not determine your health outcome. They might have a 1% influence over your health. 99% of your health is up to you. It's based on what you eat. It's based on avoiding GMOs and avoiding fluoride and avoiding toxic chemicals and avoiding smoking and fried foods and all those things that you know are bad for you. Most of your health outcome is up to you, probably, again, 99%. But the government has been saying that the genes determine your health outcome. Now, here's the danger. What happens when they take your DNA because you're arrested, they put it in a government database, which is, of course, what they do with everything. The government loves to have databases on the people. And then they analyze your DNA and they decide, oh, you have a gene for mental illness. Then they use that information to take away your Second Amendment rights. That's right. A knock on your door. Hey, we're here to take your guns because when you were arrested last week, we ran a DNA analysis over your genome sequence, and we discovered that you have the gene for mental illness. Ha ha, the joke's on you. We're taking your guns. That's what the government is going to do with this. Or even worse, they're going to say, oh, you want to sign up for Obamacare because you want to pay 100 to 200 to even 400% more for your health insurance than you used to pay because Obamacare is raising the rates on everybody around the country. Well, guess what? You're disqualified because you have a gene for breast cancer, or you have a gene for liver cancer, or you have a gene for sickle cell anemia. If you want to get down that road, they can use this with a racial bias to take away your right to have basic health care, basic human dignity in a medical system that essentially respects no human dignity, by the way. They can use your genes against you. They can use them against you in a court of law. They can say, let's say they take your children because they don't like the fact that you're not vaccinating your children or you're homeschooling your children to give them a real education instead of the watered-down, government-run public education system, right? So they take your children and then they arrest you. They get a gene swab, a DNA swab. They run the genetic code from that, and then they say, well, you have the gene of a bad parent, so you can't have your kids back. We're going to take your kids because the state knows best. We're going to take your kids and say you have a bad parenting gene. You see, this is the mythology that's so dangerous. They can say your genes are anything they want. They can say you have a gene for being a rebel. They can say you have a gene for being a patriot, which they now call terrorism. Oh, you have the gene for speaking out. That's dangerous to the government. Obama says you shouldn't listen to those voices. Maybe you should arrest those voices, put them in jail because they've got the gene for speaking out. So basically, anybody who's got genetics that are part of humanity, you know, the will to live, the will to exercise free speech, the liberty gene, you might even say, if there is such a thing, they're going to target that and target you because of your genetic code. This is a very dangerous precedent, and it will be abused. Mark my words here on this day on the Alex Jones Show. My prediction is that this will be abused in highly destructive ways against the American people. So the Supreme Court has just sent us down a hellish path of abuse of police powers over our DNA. Now, on the DNA topic, and by the way, bringing back up Angelina Jolie, who continues to be in the media for her decision to have both of her breasts removed, even though they were perfectly healthy breasts. She did not have cancer. She just had a gene that's supposed to be linked with cancer. And I strongly criticize Angelina's decision. I didn't criticize her as a person. I don't know her. I can't really criticize her. I'm criticizing her decision. But the reason this is important is because right now, today, 4,000 human genes are owned and patented by corporations and universities. Did you know that? 4,000 of your genes. Now, the human body has about 20,000 genes. 4,000 of those, or roughly 20%, are patented by someone else. What does this mean? It means you don't even own your own genetic code. You follow me on this? Somebody else claims to own your code. Who gave them that claim over your human body? Who gave them that right to claim they own it? The U.S. government. The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office gave them that claim. They handed out your genes to other corporations and universities. And what are those corporations and universities doing with that monopoly, that patent that they've been given by the U.S. Patent Office? They're using it to charge you monopoly prices on the testing of those genes. That's right. So all those women who are listening to Angelina Jolie and are saying, well, gee, I should go get tested for the BRCA1 gene or the BRCA2 gene, they're having to pay $3,000 to $4,000 out of pocket for a genetic test that should only cost $100. The reason it costs $3,000 to $4,000 is because you have to pay these monopoly royalties to a company called Myriad Genetics out of Utah that owns the patent on those genes because the U.S. Patent Office gave them that patent. It's insane, and it's going to be used against you. It's going to be used against women, especially against women who are all freaked out about whether they have this breast cancer gene. It turns out 99% of them don't have it. So you have to test 100 women to find one who has it. So you're going to spend $300,000 on this gene testing in order to find one woman who has one gene that only has about a 1% influence over her cancer outcome. That's insanity. That's a medical insanity, patent insanity, intellectual property insanity. And now the U.S. government says we can take your genes anytime we want. Yeah, we pull you over. We can just swab your mouth, and if you refuse, guess what? We're going to stick a gun in your face and make you do it, or take you to jail and then make you do it there. They can take your DNA. They can assign ownership of your DNA to someone else, as they've been doing, and they can use that against you over and over and over again. This decision by the U.S. Supreme Court is a violation not just of human rights and civil rights. It is a violation of universal law. It's a violation of God's law, if you want to say it that way. It's a violation of basic human dignity and basic genetic privacy. It is wrong. And we'll be back. Stay with us. All right, we're back. Welcome to the Alex Jones Show. We're continuing here. By the way, in the second hour, we've got Alex joining us by phone from the UK, where he's covering the Bilderberg conference. And check out all the latest videos, and I think they've even got real-time text messaging, or at least articles, at Infowars.com/B. B as in Bilderberg. David Icke will be joining us in the second hour also with Alex Jones. It's going to be a really fun and interesting conversation. And then the third hour is going to be hosted by Gerald Celente. So Gerald happens to be my favorite guest here on the Alex Jones Show. So I'm super excited that he's going to be hosting the third hour. And maybe I'll get to talk to him for a few minutes as we intro the third hour. But then I'm out of here, and I'm going to do some special reports for the nightly news on the CO2 hoax, the carbon dioxide hoax, which we'll get into here in the next segment. But before we do that, let's break down some of the other news that's happening. Mayhem in the city, New York City. 25 people were shot in the last 48 hours. Gosh, that's almost one person every 2 hours. That's quite a lot of shooting for a city that says it's making you safe by taking away all your guns. Yet more proof that gun control doesn't work, because, of course, only the criminals have the guns in New York City and Chicago and everywhere else that they try their gun control agenda. It just flat out does not work. Period. Does not work. You notice there's not a bunch of shootings like that in, I don't know, Central Texas? That's because everybody's armed, including myself, right now at this very minute, sitting here in the studio, carrying a Glock, as I always do. Everybody's armed around here. There's not crazy shootings. People are actually pretty darn polite to each other when everybody knows they're carrying. So in other news, InfoWars reporters confront Bilderberg security. Paul Joseph Watson and Richard Reeves were confronting the hotel that canceled their reservations, apparently in violation of the 2010 Equality Act in the UK, which says that people cannot be denied, they cannot be discriminated against for their political beliefs. But the hotel appears to be discriminating against the Alex Jones crew precisely because of their political beliefs. This story is posted right now on Infowars.com. It's by Paul Joseph Watson. What is that video? Oh, it's a video of them at the hotel confronting the reception personnel there and asking why their rooms were canceled. Well, gee, we know why they're canceled, because you're with Alex Jones. And we can't allow Alex Jones to exercise free speech in the United Kingdom. That would be a terrible, terrible thing. So the oppression has already begun at the Bilderberg conference, and you can expect there will be more interesting stories all week long. Now, 2/3 of Americans don't know if they will insure under Obamacare. I mentioned this in the last segment, but I have a few other comments here. Obamacare has been described as a train wreck. It's already derailed. It's running off the tracks. It's just a matter of time before the cars start stacking up and whatever explosives were being carried by the train start leaking out and catching on fire. This is a disaster. The state exchanges that are supposed to be running Obamacare can't even get their IT departments to work correctly. Most of the states that claim they're going to have this by January 1 of 2014 are not going to be able to do it. There are going to be computer problems galore. If you think the DMV is a nightmare, wait until you try to sign up for the Obamacare exchanges in your state. That is going to be an IT nightmare. I mean, just imagine the mess of all these overpaid government employees trying to figure out highly complex relational databases. They're probably going to try to run the whole system on an Excel spreadsheet because they don't even know how to use databases. So it's going to be a massive nightmare. And the whole thing, my prediction is it's all going to fall flat on its face, and Obamacare is eventually going to be pulled. It's going to be redacted. It's going to be rejected after the 2014 elections. And certainly by the 2016 presidential election, things are going to be so different by then. Hopefully we will have Obama impeached by that time. We'll have Obamacare pulled out of U.S. law. We'll have some liberty back in place. We'll have Rand Paul successfully championing the legalization of industrial hemp farming in America, something that he's just come out for, so that our farmers can get back to business, making money again, planting a crop that has a multitude of uses. It's not about marijuana. This is industrial hemp, okay? You can't smoke it, but you can turn it into clothes and textiles and car parts and even seeds and oils and nutritional products. It's the crop for America. It's what we need right now. Go, Rand Paul. Get it legalized, okay? Thank you. Thank you for standing up for liberty. We love you. Keep it up. Stay tuned. This is The Alex Jones Show. We'll be right back. All right, we're back on The Alex Jones Show. Thank you for joining us. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, editor of naturalnews.com, filling in today. Alex and David Icke are going to be co-hosting the second hour. I'll be riding shotgun for that. And then in the third hour, Gerald Celente will be hosting the show. So we've got a great lineup for you today. We've already covered some fascinating news, but now I want to take you to a little science class here. Don't worry, it's not gonna bore you. And you're not going to get an F, huh? No, you're going to get an A, because we're going to talk about the truth about science and atmospheric gases that they don't want you to know in the mainstream media. Specifically, we're talking about, well, greenhouse gases and carbon dioxide. And here in the studio, I brought some flashcards. Obviously, you can't see them on the radio, but if you're tuned in on prisonplanet.tv, you can see the flashcards. Now, we've got elements here on the flashcards: carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, and argon, all with their atomic weights, with pictures. Cool pictures. Isn't that awesome? Now, here's the myth. Here's the delusion being pushed by Al Gore. He says that carbon dioxide, which is a combination of one carbon and two oxygen atoms, carbon dioxide, he says, is a pollutant. CO2 is a pollutant, he says, and it's so deadly and so dangerous it's going to destroy human civilization unless you pay him and his buddies some carbon taxes. So you got to pay him money, and then you'll be okay. But let's talk about carbon dioxide and what's really in the atmosphere. It turns out that carbon dioxide has just surpassed a level of 400 parts per million in Earth's atmosphere. 400 parts per million. Well, what does that mean, really? Is it high? Is it low? Because Al Gore wants you to think it's alarmingly high. It's terrible. It's atrocious. It's going to kill us. Well, 400 parts per million is 400 out of a million. So 400 parts per million is less than 1/2 of 1/1000th of the air. 400 parts per million is so small, it's so minuscule, it is a trace gas in the air. It almost doesn't exist at all. And the levels in the past in Earth's history have been as high as 7,000 parts per million. So 400 is very, very small. In fact, right now in this office, it's probably 2,000 parts per million. In many offices or work environments, it can go up to 3,000 or 4,000 parts per million. So 400 parts per million in the atmosphere is ridiculously small. At the same time, when you exhale, you're exhaling carbon dioxide, your breath can exhale as much as 40,000 parts per million carbon dioxide, which adds to the atmosphere. But you're not a polluter just for breathing, are you? That's what Al Gore wants you to think. And a lot of people are confused about this. A lot of people have been brainwashed, and I got to admit, I was one of them. Yeah, 5 years ago, I was writing about global warming and CO2. I had fallen for the Al Gore argument. Well, I tell you what, I educated myself since then, and I can admit today that I was wrong about that, and that the CO2 myth is a complete hoax. It turns out that oxygen by itself is at a level in the atmosphere of 210,000 parts per million. You got that? So CO2 is only 400 parts per million. Oxygen is at 210,000 parts per million. And over here, nitrogen, you see this? Nitrogen is at 780,000 parts per million of the atmosphere. And then there's a little bit of argon in the atmosphere. And I include hydrogen in here because H2O, hydrogen and oxygen, creates, well, water vapor, and there's a little bit of that in the atmosphere as well. So what you're looking at here on these flashcards is most of what's in the atmosphere. Not everything, but most of it, by far the majority. So we're supposed to be concerned about the CO2 being at 400 parts per million? Well, wait a minute. Some new science has just come out that says that as CO2 levels are rising, it's causing more plants to regrow and regreen desert type of areas, arid areas, all across the planet. They're regreening because of rising levels of CO2. Here it is in Science News. There's been a new study that was just published. It looked at CO2 concentrations, and as they're rising, which they are, I'm not saying they aren't going up slowly, they're rising, thank God, because they've been so desperately low for so long that the plants are starving for CO2, okay? So they're finally going up a little bit, and it's helping the forests and it's helping the trees. I got to tell you, if you're an environmentalist, and I'm a legitimate, true libertarian environmentalist. I love the environment. I love plants. I love aquaponics. I love growing food from seeds. I love forests. I love CO2 because CO2 helps all of those things. CO2 makes forests grow back faster. It is the ultimate reforestation nutrient. It is a fertilizer, okay? CO2 is fertilizer from the air that helps deserts and arid areas and forests regrow forests and regreen. It's the ultimate nutrient that environmentalists should be supporting. But Al Gore has got these people all twisted up to where they're thinking that CO2 is a poison and that if you're an environmentalist, you have to be against CO2. It's ridiculous. Now, by the way, just to clarify, because I know where people leap on this issue, I am not pro-oil and pro-gas and pro-coal, okay? I'm not pro-fossil fuels. And no, the coal industry didn't pay me to say any of this. In fact, coal is very dirty. Burning fossil fuels is dirty, all right? Now, coal can be made cleaner than it used to be. It's a lot cleaner here in the U.S. than it is in China, for sure. But it's still, it puts sulfur into the air. It puts mercury into the air. Fossil fuels, you know, oil, BP spills it into the Gulf of Mexico, crimes against nature. Exxon, crimes against nature. These companies, I do not support them, all right? Just to be clear, just to be on the record, I don't support the fossil fuel energy industry. That's not my thing. But I do support rising CO2 levels as a way to regreen the planet. And this is where we've got to get our heads on straight. CO2 is such a powerful nutrient for growing plants that greenhouse owners actually pump CO2 into the greenhouses to boost production of the food plants there. Did you hear me on that? They pump CO2 into the greenhouses to boost productivity. If you want to grow more food on the planet, you need more CO2. If you want to reforest the areas where forests have been lost, you need more CO2. I'm not saying burn oil and put CO2 into the atmosphere. It turns out that ocean life produces most of the CO2 anyway, and that's enough. The ocean is exchanging CO2 with the atmosphere constantly. And just like we exhale CO2, ocean creatures are exhaling CO2 as part of their respiration. So CO2 levels, the higher they go, the greener our planet gets, which is why CO2 is the ultimate nutrient for environmental support of plants and trees and food and gardens. All right? So get it through your heads, folks. I know a lot of people. I mean, I did an article on this on Natural News yesterday, and some people were still screaming at me. And they were, well, like one of the comments, this is the dumbest comment ever from a Facebook troll, was in my article when I said, let's celebrate rising CO2 levels because it's good for plants, it's good for food, it's good for trees. The dumbest comment ever was, stop being so negative. Yeah, can you believe that? Stop being negative? What do you mean? I was being positive. I was celebrating CO2 levels. They're going up. It's good for nature. It's good for plants. It's good for food production. It's good for trees. You know, and it doesn't hurt us. We can actually, your breath has 40,000 parts per million CO2. If you can save another person's life by breathing that into them through mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, they will come back to life. You're breathing oxygen and carbon dioxide into them from you. The carbon dioxide doesn't hurt them, even at that high level for that short a period of time. In fact, OSHA has set a limit in a workplace of 5,000 parts per million, more than 10 times the current level of CO2 that's in the atmosphere. You can work in an office environment. You can breathe just fine at 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, even 5,000 parts per million. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. So I just couldn't believe that comment. He stopped being negative. You know, actually, it's Al Gore's being negative. Al Gore is the doom and gloomer. He's the one that's saying, we're all going to be destroyed. Human civilization is going to end if the CO2 level goes up and the greenhouse gases and the planet's going to fry and you have to pay him money to solve the problem. That's doomsday talk, okay? That's doom and gloom right there from Al Gore. I'm being the optimist. We are the optimists. We're saying CO2 levels going up, that's great. That's great for the plants. It's great for the trees. It's great for food production. We can produce more food, feed more people. We can turn deserts into forests. We can turn arid areas into forests. We can regreen the planet thanks to CO2. So that's the wrap-up of that little science lesson. I hope this gets posted on YouTube. I want to see the comments on there to see. It really sets apart people who are intelligent, rational thinkers versus those who are just delusional cultists who believe in the Al Gore cult of CO2 being evil. All right, it's a very clear, it's a litmus test for your IQ, basically. And like I said, I admit, I failed that test many years ago, and I was suckered into the whole global warming thing. And it takes a lot to admit you were wrong and change your opinion, but I think that is a sign of someone who actually thinks about what they're saying. Sometimes we change our minds. I changed my mind about Adam Kokesh, by the way. You know, at first I was like, his march on Washington, which has now been sort of expanded into 50 states, I was like, that's the worst thing ever. I think it's a terrible idea. Then I rethought, I rethought the thing, and I said, Adam Kokesh, he's got a point. He's got a point. The most dangerous thing is sitting at home doing nothing. So I support activism. I don't necessarily support the speech, saying it's going to be an armed overthrow or anything like that. I don't think we need to go there. I agree with Alex on that point. Let's fight the info war first. Let's not whip out the rifles and start, flying lead downrange to make our point. Let's use words instead. Because we're winning on the words, all right? We're winning on the mathematics. We just talked about mathematics in the atmospheric gases and science. We're winning on the mathematics of economics. Austrian economics is winning, okay? We're winning on so many fronts that we should just keep the info war going. But if we are ever wrong, if we come to the conclusion that maybe there's new information that comes in that contradicts our previous opinion, then we got to be man enough to change our opinion and admit, yeah, we learned something new. We're changing our stance on something. We got to be man enough to admit that and then move forward from that point forward. And I'm not saying I'm 100% correct on everything right now. There might be things that I change a few years down the road. But I do know, these are elements from the table of elements. Carbon dioxide is not a pollutant. I know that. I mean, unless you're on a space station or something, and then if you're on a space station, then yeah, CO2 is a pollutant because it's going to build up in the air. You got to have scrubbers to, remove it from the air. CO2 scrubbers is why they have them on spaceships. But on Earth, we've got enough plants to balance that out. So it's not a pollutant, it is a nutrient. That's the point of all this. All right, so Enough said on that point. Let's go to the next big news item. Got to get this in before we go to David Icke and Alex Jones in the next hour. Check this out. South Korea joins the Japanese ban on U.S. imports or imports of U.S. wheat after the shocking GMO contamination announcement by the USDA. I'm going to cover this very quickly. Here's the deal. The USDA tested commercial crop fields, wheat fields in Oregon, and it found that they were contaminated with Monsanto's genetically engineered wheat, which was only used experimentally, planted across 16 states in the United States from 1998 to 2005. This genetically engineered wheat has never been approved by the government for commercial use, and it has never been intentionally grown in any commercial farm. What this means is that the genetically engineered wheat escaped. It escaped the experiment. Yeah, it got loose, all right? And it spread to other farms and other fields, and it's now being found in wheat where it's not supposed to be found. Now, Japan got word of this and said, hey, we're canceling our contracts, bud. We're not going to buy that wheat from the United States because it's contaminated with GMOs, and we here in Japan, we don't want to eat GMOs. Well, South Korea just joined in on Friday, said the same thing. We don't want to eat GMOs either. We don't want that Monsanto contaminated wheat. We're not buying wheat from the United States. Why is this a big deal? Think about it. If you're a U.S. wheat farmer, you just got screwed by Monsanto big time, because now the wheat prices are going to collapse in the United States through no fault of your own, only through the fault of Monsanto, whose GMOs are contaminating wheat crops, causing prices to go down because it's being rejected by other countries all around the world. Most of the world doesn't want to eat GMO. Most of the people don't want to eat GMO. GMOs are rejected by everyone except Monsanto and a few members of Congress who are in Monsanto's pocket and the corrupt USDA. And that's it. Everybody else rejects it. So if you're a farmer and you're growing wheat, now you're going to suffer an economic loss because of Monsanto's experiments gone awry. Because of that experimental crop grown in the open air with no protections, that didn't even grow it in a greenhouse. All right, this is open field. Let's see what happens. Let's play genetic roulette, to quote Jeffrey Smith's book, with the entire agricultural system. So now we've got, check this out, thanks to the USDA conspiring with Monsanto to legalize these open field experiments, we've now got a situation where we have genetic pollution, polluting the fields of America's breadbasket. Now we've got wheat, and we've got corn, and we've got alfalfa, and probably other crops that are contaminated with GMOs. And you can never put that back in the box. You can never take that back. So is our wheat crop now ruined permanently, where other countries aren't going to import U.S. wheat ever? Hopefully not. Hopefully they'll find a way to still buy U.S. wheat. But it could be that bad. It could be that bad. And this is why it's important for all of us to recognize that Monsanto is hurting farmers. Monsanto is destroying the integrity of the United States agricultural system. It is destroying the economic productivity. Monsanto is hurting U.S. exports. Monsanto is hurting the GDP of the United States of America. It's time all of you out there woke up and smelled the coffee on this issue and realized that Monsanto is bad for America. It's bad for farmers. It's bad for your food. It's all around bad news. And now the proof is in the exports. Japan says no. South Korea says no. That's it. You're done. No more wheat being exported. All right, let's move on to U.S. news here. We've got an Oregon man flying American flag upside down to protest the Obama presidency. I'm going to go through a few of these headlines here very quickly while we have time. Hey, guys, awesome. You upgraded to color printouts. That's pretty cool. All right. The State Department says there's no active al-Qaeda or Hezbollah terror cells in the Western Hemisphere. Oh, really? What about the ones running the U.S. government? The Intel chair, this is in the Weekly Standard, chair of the Intel, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence says, release the bin Laden documents. The Bradley Manning court-martial trial starts today. The trial is dangerous for civil liberties, say experts. Soldier faces charges of aiding the enemy by downloading and leaking hundreds of thousands of classified documents. He's called a hero to his followers, an enemy of the state to others. It's 3 years after his arrest. And a man molests and urinates on a woman in the ER, says police. That's out of New York. Yeah, just another sign of the insanity happening in America today. Stay with us. This is the Alex Jones Show on GCN. We'll be right back after this break with more news. Okay, welcome back. This is the Alex Jones Show here on GCN, and Alex is in the UK. He successfully arrived there to cover the Bilderberg conference that's going to be happening all week with Paul Joseph Watson and others. He joins us by phone now to give us the report of his travels and his arrival. Hey, Alex, you're on.
Mike, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sitting in and doing a great job on the broadcast for Natural News and for InfoWars. Obviously, Bilderberg doesn't kick off till Thursday, but the things that are happening here politically, their agenda just being released today, the list of attendees, just 6-7 years ago, they didn't do that. And even then, they would just send to one big newspaper, if a big stink got made, the list of government officials that were there from around the world. Now they put out the whole list and the agenda 3 days before it officially starts. We had that first today because Charlie Skelton of The Guardian alerted us even before The Guardian posted it that it is up on the official Bilderberg meetings site. We now have the agenda and a breakdown of that, as well as the full list up on Infowars.com. And again, for new listeners listening on AM and FM stations, you may be saying, why cover some group of politicians, royalty elite? Well, now it's about 150 members. There's a lot of them that aren't on the list every year. We're here to identify them. That's always the key people. And we have moles very close to Bilderberg, and we're able to learn the agenda for the year coming up. These people brag and released to the BBC about 4 years ago the fact that they helped found what became the EU. These are the people setting up the New World Order. These are the people behind the carbon taxes. It's in 21. Last year, when I was in Chantilly, Virginia at Bilderberg, a gentleman showed up with the National Archives. I'll just leave it at that. And he said, this isn't classified, but he said, if you've got the huevos, you can post it. It is restricted. And it was marked on each one, restricted National Archives of a U.S. senator's papers and some other internal Bilderberg documents. So it was his papers from meetings there in the 50s and 60s. And everything they talked about, they then got done within a decade. And so it's royalty. It's all of them getting together with energy ministers and others with the heads of the big power companies to then decide who's going to be able to operate, who's going to be shut down. It's the ultimate backroom deals, and it is a giant victory that people now know that Bilderberg even exists. I mean, just 4 years ago, as I've talked a lot about, the New York Times did a film review on the film New World Order and basically said that I was insane and Bilderberg didn't exist. And I was in Virginia, again, 5 years ago when they had the event, but this was in their newspaper 4 years ago when that film came out, imagining it. So it's a big defeat to them. First, they said it doesn't exist, and you're all kooks. There's nobody above presidents and prime ministers. The buck stops there. There's no secretive special interest, blah, blah, blah. Because Bilderberg members had been indicted and gotten in trouble before, like Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, in Lockheed Martin's taxpayer scams, buying jets for more money than they were worth as getting kickbacks. Let's say a jet's worth $2 million. Well, he'd buy them for $5 million a piece and get $1 million out of the $3 million extra. That's the type of stuff that they do on a small fry scale. It's much, much bigger. So that's why this is so huge. That's why this is so important. And think about the victory we've had, folks. All of us should be savoring this to realize we can have victory. These are just humans just like us. They're not God. They're not invincible. That they wanted to deny this existed for decades, and now they're forced to admit it. They go, okay, but so what? It's no big deal. Is that why over £2 million or close to $4 million is being spent to erect a giant steel fence we're going to videotape tonight?
Alex, we gotta go to break here, Alex.
Okay, great.
Okay, so we're going to break, folks. Stay with us. Alex Jones and also David Icke joins us in the next hour. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this break. You're listening to the Alex Jones Show. Stay there. All right, welcome to the second hour. This is the Alex Jones Show. Alex continues to join us live by Skype, and he's going to be here for much of this second hour. We've got David Icke coming in later in the hour, and then in the third hour, Gerald Celente is hosting. Again, my favorite guest here on the show. And Alex, as I turn it over to you, I know your focus is Bilderberg, but I'm just wondering if you would comment on the big Drudge-linked story today, the U.S. Supreme Court saying that police can take your DNA anytime they want.
It's horrible news. It's the way the whole world's going because the establishment wants authoritarianism. The people running things have openly said, Bilderberg has said, the Trilateral Commission has said, the RAND Corporation has stated. In fact, we should talk about that more after the break and get David Icke's take on that. They just want to set the precedent to do whatever they want, whenever they want, and shut down the free press because the system is becoming so inequitable, so fraudulent. You've got big, fat special interests that are able to shut down their competition, able to transfer most of the wealth of themselves through government, corporate welfare, and bailouts. And then you've got a giant, dumbed-down mass of people that eat GMO and watch TV all day who will go along with it. But then you've got maybe 30% of us, conservatively worldwide or more, that actually are starting to wake up to what's happening and aren't going along. So it's when the unstoppable force meets the immovable object, it's going to be a nuclear explosion or an atomic reaction. Politically, historically, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So as evil rises, good rises. And this is the process. I really had an epiphany last night flying in on that 10-hour flight from Dallas, Texas into London. I've got to say, I'd never seen the PBS special by Stephen Hawking on the nature of reality and, you know, do we have free will or not? And, of course, they ended up at the show saying we obviously do have free will. But expanding on that, it is our job to be tested. That's what this planet's all about in the middle of space. I mean, there's no doubt every culture has known this at their core. And it is our job to decide whether we support negative energy, destructive energy, parasitic energy, or, and I'm not trying to be new age here, I'm just saying, or whether, but just boiling it down to its most simple physics, or whether we support things that are of a higher order, things that build, things that construct. Are we based on fraud or are we based on lies? And so there is tyranny galloping forward worldwide because of all the cosmologies out there. And there's different forces in this world, different forces of good, different forces of evil, different passive forces. I hate to get philosophical here, but the main driving evil force is technocratic, it is scientific, and it believes in survival of the fittest, and it believes that dumbing us down and then killing us is an act of righteous dominance. But in the process, the globalists are destroying the planet and themselves. And it's really twisted. I mean, really, they're just a bunch of bullies who enjoy hurting innocent people. But when we come back briefly, as we go to David Icke, I will tell you my experience getting into the country because they interrogated me for 15 hours in Canada, said they weren't going to let me in until a bunch of press showed up. Thanks to Jim Tucker calling the CBC and others and local newspapers. Then they got scared and released me. I believe they weren't going to let me into England, who's blocked Michael Savage and many others, except for the fact that I made the point, this will just be bigger news if you don't let me in. We got into the cube. And, well, I'll tell the story when we come back. It's just that they definitely had extra people up there with us, and they were making a decision on whether or not we were going to be let into the country, because everybody else was just flying right through, and some things happened there, so I'll finish up with that. But this is a big deal that we can be here, that we can cover this, and that now Bilderberg is admitted in all over German, British, Dutch newspapers, some U.S. newspapers, but now they've got to make jokes about it. I mean, oh, it's just a bunch of elitists meeting in secret. What's the big deal? Well, we're here to expose what they're doing, the men in the smoking room. And again, Mike Adams, I want to thank you for co-hosting and being traffic cop today. David Icke is coming up with Mike Adams, Alex Jones, and more. I'm coming to you live from Bilderberg 2013.
Welcome to the second hour of the Alex Jones Show. This is Mike Adams filling in with Alex, who's joining us via Skype from the UK, where he just arrived. He's going to tell us that story in a minute about how the extra scrutiny was applied to him arriving there because of the Bilderberg conference. But Alex, I gotta tell you, when I walked in the studio today, I saw this infidel armor, and I have it on the desk here. It's awesome. It's got Molly attachments. I mean, I normally don't, plug your sponsors, but I'm glad you have the sponsor, and this body armor looks really amazing. I'm impressed by it.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up, because I do need to plug our great sponsors that have helped finance this trip to come cover the global shadow government. And we're about to go talk to David Icke. I'm only going to be here for about 20 minutes so that David can get in a word in edgewise. And I really look forward to meeting him in person on Friday. And hopefully we'll get him in studio with us during the show Friday, U.S. time, Friday evening. British time, UK time. But David Icke is about to join us. I saw his impassioned letter last week when they were talking about not letting anybody have a permit to have a rally on city property, private property, you name it, but letting the Bilderberg group, have their criminal events. We're going to have David Icke on with us here in just a minute. But yes, Infidel body armor, just amazing body armor. They also have the bulletproof backpacks that are so popular, and they're a great sponsor, and they're patriots. And you can go to infidelbodyarmor.com, infidelbodyarmor.com, or give them a call, 1-888-608-6605, 888-608-6605. And also financing the real press, exposing Bilderberg, getting in their face, bringing out the real agenda from decades ago, them saying it didn't exist, till 5-6 years ago having to admit it exists, but still saying it doesn't matter if world leaders meet in secret. Financing that is, of course, InfoWarsStore.com, and all the best products are there, like the Pro Pure water filtration. We're still running the special, the biggest special ever, 15% off with promo code WATER15, WATER15. You can go there. We're going to sell out of the Traveler stainless steel gravity-fed filters very soon. The others are going to sell out. I said it would run till June 9th, the end of Bilderberg. I can't say it's going to continue, but a few days probably, because they are selling out, ladies and gentlemen. This has happened before. We did a 15% off. So WATER15 is the promo code at InfoWarsStore.com, or call 888-253-3139.
Hey, Alex, on this body armor, just real quick comment. Everybody I know who's a prepper is running a chest rig like this, or some kind of body armor like this. The thing is, you can run it as a chest rig without the plate, and just to carry things. I mean, even as a farmer or a gardener, you can carry, because it's got all the MOLLE attachments and it's got the ATAX pattern of camo, and then you can put the chest plate in if you need to, if there's riots or gangs looting or whatever. So it's dual purpose. I've got stuff just like that.
And I know you're one hell of a farmer and a prepper, man. I mean, you're out there doing it with your cows and your goats and everything else. You're doing a great job. Again, Mike Adams of naturalnews.com is writing Shotgun. Gerald Celente is going to be giving you a trends in the news update for about 50 minutes in the third hour. I want to go to David Icke of davidicke.com. I want to thank everybody that's made exposing Bilderberg possible. David Icke has exposed it for 20 years with people saying it didn't exist. Jim Tucker, that died about a month ago, he exposed it for about 35 years, the real trailblazer. I've been exposing it for 18 years. Sites like davidicke.com, naturalnews.com, infowars.com, and the biggest in the last 6 years, drudgereport.com. Drudge was the only big outlet in the U.S., other than InfoWars, that would put it on his site when we covered it, and foreign press like The Guardian covered it, forcing the Washington Post, after 50-plus years of attendance, the Graham family to admit it exists. So that's the big issue. They don't want you to know there's something above presidents and prime ministers. And Bilderberg is right up there at the top of the pyramid, and now it's merging with Google and the technocracy that David Icke has talked so much about. And so I want to do a couple things here. I want to get David's take on, how they're acting like we, the media, and the demonstrators that are coming, like we're dirty and we're bad, and then GS security coming out, and G4S security coming out, this big globalist outfit, and saying, oh, the only place you're allowed to have press in Watford. In fact, they're saying on the city sidewalks and this rural countryside area that the hotel's at, that no one's allowed to walk on the sidewalk or on the grass, and that citizens have to show their ID. This is in the newspaper. The police chief, and the county sheriff as well. You'll have to show your ID to walk down the street or drive a car. They've got checkpoints set up. This is martial law. And I've talked to the head cop liaison And he says, he's a listener and does particularly like what's going on, but I'm not going to say much more. I don't want to get him in trouble. I don't think he's playing good cop, bad cop. He gets that he's compartmentalized, as David Icke has said. Here are the people protecting this and oppressing the people while they themselves are being oppressed and destroyed. So I want to get his take on that made him so angry in a letter that we published on Infowars.com last week or earlier. Yes, it was last week. I'm a bit jet lagged, folks. Sorry. Haven't had any sleep. And then I want him to get into why they're merging with Google, because we have inside moles. That was a big story we broke 2 weeks ago. That's why they don't want us in the hotel days ahead and threw us out, because Google is meeting there now and for a week after, and it's almost a permanent command base. Turns out they hatched a bunch of World War II OSS stuff there. Turns out they hatched the Arab Spring there. This Watford compound is key and has a transhumanist skeleton merging with a machine climbing out of a reflecting pool in the back. So without further ado, I want to thank David Icke for being such a big part of this. He can bring out 6,000 to 7,000 people easily. And so if that many show up, they're going to make it hard, folks, but you got to do it. This could bring down Bilderberg politically by forcing it out into the media. If they miscalculate, if the police abuse anybody, or if the security people do, that will backfire. I believe we have these guys by the short hairs. David Icke, again, former head of the Green Party, champion goalie, BBC sports reporter, and, of course, best-selling author. And say which one about David Icke. He gets people thinking. David Icke, what do you make of how historic this year is? And do you disagree with me that this is a key time and a key opportunity here outside of London?
I think it is. I think we are looking at an historic moment, and in terms of the history of exposure. And you know, what I wonder, Alex, coming from England and knowing the geography and the location and all that stuff, is what on earth are they doing meeting in that hotel in Watford? I mean, they must have a very good reason for it, because from a protest point of view, they're 30 minutes by a train from central London. They're a short journey in a car, really, from the second biggest city in England, Birmingham, the East Midlands cities, which are just up the motorway. They're actually at a place where so many people, they're in the middle of a vast population area, and so either they miscalculated, or they hope they'll cause trouble and do a problem reaction solution, or there's another reason why it has to be that hotel, because what they've done is create a situation in which the people, instead of having to go to them, they've almost come to us. You know, in 1995, Alex, the great Jim Tucker did a round-robin email saying that the Bilderberg meeting was a place called Bergenstock in Switzerland. And as coincidence would have it, I was staying with some friends about 2 hours away at the same time, though I didn't know that when I agreed to go. So on the day before, I went across there, down the 2 hours, down the motorway, freeway, and I went up to 3 enormously flash hotels, the Park, the Palace, and the Grand, at the top of this mountain. It was basically in the middle of nowhere, and there was just like not much more than a village down the bottom of the mountain. And I saw them putting up the temporary fences. I saw the people walking around with their name tags on, and there was no one around protesting. I mean, Jim was there somewhere, but I didn't meet him. And then I went back on the last day of the Bilderberg meeting that year, 1995, and I wanted to see if I could get closer when it was going on. I couldn't even get on the mountain. Right down in the entrance onto the mountain road from the village, there was the Swiss police. The guys had, I remember them, big orange luminous jackets on. And I said to them, I just want to go up to the hotel. They said, oh, no, you can't. There's something going on. And I asked the guy, so what is it, mate, playing the idiot? Why can't I go on? What's going on? And he just said to me, I don't know, but it's top secret, he said. And I sat there and I thought, that's compartmentalization for you. to manipulate your life, your children's life, your grandchildren's life, and you are protecting them when you don't even know they're there and the agenda that's happening.
By the way, David, we're going to skip this. We're going to skip this network break because I got to you a little bit late. We're going to skip this break. This is the perfect example of everything you're talking about. Please continue.
And so it's going to be quite emotional, I think, very likely, when I come up there, because having stood at the bottom of that mountain and saw just nothing in front of me, and I couldn't even see the hotels are so far away. Here we are now, looking in their face, and I do urge as many people as possible to come along in total peace, and I'm sure that's what the vast majority's intent will be. But let's make a massive statement by numbers that we are not having this anymore, and that we are starting to figure out what's going on. And this is such a wonderful opportunity for massive exposure. You've got the media now. I do have to laugh. You've got the mainstream media who are now covering it and often making fun of the alternative media. The media, overwhelmingly, well, in fact, if you go back to 1995 and when Jim Tucker was the trailblazer, the media entirely that will be there covering this event would not be there this weekend if it wasn't for the alternative media, if it wasn't for the Jim Tuckers who trailblazed this when no one else wanted to know, and the media were just laughing and ignoring it.
And David, isn't this...
And Jim trailblazed it, and the mainstream media have had to follow us, and they better get used to it because it's only just started.
No, I totally agree, and that's where I was going. In my gut, in my intellect, in my spirit, at every level, this is a microcosm of the entire world, the entire universe of what's happening. And I want you to elaborate on that, and Mike Adams, who's riding shotgun, to pop in with any of his views on this, because here is Westbrook Pegler covering this 60 years ago, not even knowing its name. Tucker picks it up 36 years ago, and it wasn't until a decade ago that really even foreign press would cover it. And now I talk to people on the airplane, they know what it is, even if they don't know who David Icke is or Alex Jones. So again, this shows our power, the people's power, that they've gone from a stone wall, doesn't exist. There aren't 2 billion bullets. There aren't armored vehicles. There aren't NSA spying on you. There isn't a new world order. We're not putting cancer viruses in the vaccines. We're not giving you GMO to kill you, to where we were all on the airplane flying here last night. And I was talking to people, they're going, Henry Kissinger wants a new world order and he's scum, and GMO's designed to sterilize us with chemicals in it. And I'm going, do you know who I am? No, who are you? And it was, I'm telling you, David, people are either getting more zombie or they're getting more awake, and I think it's coming to a crescendo. And as you just said, their arrogance, by the way, I read this 2 weeks ago, and then looked it up, and it's true. This is on some weird ritual site that had a stone circle at it before they built this palace that royalty would have parties at. And then they brag on the side of the thing that people have been coming here to party and mate for 6,000 years. So it is some type of weird power site for them. But just interjecting, I totally agree. This is historical. This is the Bilderberg meeting to be to, folks. This is it. This is where we force the global shadow government out in the open. David Icke.
Well, what I was saying earlier, Alex, about, why have they held it here in that great, population area, and I kept saying, or some other reason. Well, that's what I was talking about when I said that. The Bilderberg group is very, very significant, but it is a strand in a gigantic web, and you go much deeper in the rabbit hole than the Bilderberg group to find the source. And from that comes a deep knowledge of the nature of reality, the nature of the Earth's energy field, the fact that everything is conscious, and if you can do things to the Earth energy field, you can affect the collective consciousness of everyone, because at the energetic electromagnetic level, we are interacting with the planet, we're interacting with all energetic fields. And this is why they're constantly doing their rituals. And they do select Bilderberg meetings based on this, and this is a classic example. So in many ways, when you look at it from that point of view, there was only one place they were going to come, which is there for energetic reasons. This is what you find and understand when you go deeper in the rabbit hole. And when you get down there, you also realize that there is a reason or an explanation for the apparent blatant contradiction between a network of families and secret societies who are systematically dismantling the planet and the fact that they have to live here. I mean, this is not the time to go into it, but they want to change the planet into a different state that suits something.
And that's what's so crazy is that they tell us all day we want to kill the earth, and then they say they're the saviors, while they're the ones on every front, GMO, chemicals, you name it, actively trying to not even play a good God, but to play a destructive, ugly God. And David, expanding on that, even if other people don't believe in the occult and things, I snuck into Bohemian Grove. I have, covered Skull and Bones. You said that Savelle was, running kids to the royal family 15 years ago. Now it's come out the guy was, this total Satanist. And for those of us that aren't like these people, we're blind to it because we can't see into that dark spectrum that they inhabit, that they operate in. And expanding on that, that's why they've been so scared of exposure, because as you said, Bilderberg was just one uncovered part of, say, a temple out in the Sahara Desert, one little piece sticking up, and they said, oh, that's not part of a temple, don't go dig over there. And we started digging like archaeologists and are now digging and finding this giant submerged structure. Is that a good analogy?
Well, yeah, we can bring a few things together here. First of all, understanding that these people at the Bilderberg group, I'm looking through the list in front of me that is said to be coming this year, they look rich and powerful people, and on one level they're rich and powerful people, but in the greater scheme of the global network, they are gophers, and they are terrified on one side of those much deeper in the rabbit hole, because this is a whole edifice of fear that they're caught in. And on the other side, there's still massive compartmentalization, and a lot of the people there will know some of the picture, but they won't know all of it. And these people who are really in the know, they worship these gods. They've been talked about in every culture for eons under different names, and they interact with these gods. And what I'm talking about gods, I'm talking about non-human entities, and they are seeking to change the planet to suit them. This is why they are using GMO and goodness knows how many other methods to change human DNA. This is why they're doing the genetic modification of animals, of plants, and all the rest of it. They are seeking to turn this planet into something that is right for them. And this has been an ongoing thing for centuries.
Well, let me say this. I mean, they are publicly, as you know, in all their publications saying they're a different species than us. We're animals, they're God, and that they're going to transcend and merge with machines. And so, again, just from a news perspective, whether it's true or not, when I was at Bohemian Grove, they were worshiping. They are occultists. They believe this is real. And I want you to come back and get into whatever you want with Mike Adams, because I'm going to leave you, David, so that you can have some time here. You're going to be in studio with us sometime on Friday during the show, Friday evening, British time. I think we were talking during the break. You're good for that, correct?
Yeah, I'll see you Friday.
All right, fantastic. But let me ask you this question as we get ready to go to break. You've got a few minutes here. Specifically, though, calling out the troops, because you're huge all over the world. I have a big audience here in the UK as well, but you're really probably biggest here in the UK. Where you can get 7,000-8,000 people out at an event. What do you think people should do? What are points you think that they should be making? I mean, we don't really talk about talking points, but what do you think the most important message is to get out here?
Well, I think the biggest message is numbers. If we get a very large number of people turning up at this event, I mean, what we've just discussed, Alex, what we're looking at here is absolutely unprecedented. so over the top. I mean, the people that run the world are insane. I mean, that's the penny that needs to drop before you start understanding the world we live in. They're mad. But if we calmly and peacefully assemble in large numbers, I mean, even focus it on the Saturday when people are not working, and let's make a statement in numbers that people, including the mainstream media,
just numbers,
cannot ignore. You see, this is the thing. You see, what you're talking about on the train. The people, vast numbers of people now, are far more aware of the world they live in than the journalists who are reporting the world.
Let's come back. Let's come back and talk about that with David Icke of DavidIcke.com. Riding shotgun from Mission Control in Austin, Texas is Mike Adams of naturalnews.com, and I'm Alex Jones of Infowars.com. This is historic. I've been telling my crew that. We all need to recognize the fact that huge positive things are happening.
All right, we're continuing now on the Alex Jones Show. Thank you for joining us. Alex Jones and David Icke are both joining us by phone and Skype, reporting live from the UK. And also to both of you guys, before I turn it over, Alex, when you're done, when you want to turn it over to me, I want to keep David Icke on the air. I've got more questions for David if he's available to take some more questions.
Absolutely, he's with us for the rest of the hour.
Excellent.
I'm going to get out of here right now. Of course, I'm jet lagged, but now I've got a total energy once I got on air. It's just that I'm going to let you and David now take it from here, and then you can ask any questions you've got of David. It's just that listeners know this about me. I don't hype something up unless I really believe in it. And this is so huge and historical, what's happening, that I don't feel like I am properly imparting to people how big this is, the awakening that's going on. And one of two things happened. I got in to UK border, to customs, and the EU citizens, that's the Brits under the EU, they all went right through, but myself and hundreds of others went and got in line for about an hour, and everybody was just going instantly through. Nobody was getting stopped. People were just straight through. If they let you get a ticket here, then you're usually let right in. But when we got up there, 3 extra women came over, men lined up behind the counter, myself and Leanne McAdoo. This didn't happen when Richard flew in the day before, Richard Reeves. And they all lined up and were looking at us and were making a decision. And then she interrogated us probably 4 or 5 times longer than they did other people. And they were looking for some technicality like Canada did one time, saying, who's paying you to be here? And I said, I told you, I'm a media person, and they all knew who I was. That was clear as hell. These people lined up waiting for something. And then they said, okay, and she reluctantly stamped it, and I got in. In the past, Jim Tucker's been blocked out of countries, and then he's got to go to another country in Europe to get back in. In the past, Daniel Estlin's been blocked. In the past, I've been blocked. And so the fact that they didn't block me showed that they do not want a lot of press attention, which is exactly what they're getting. We're seeing, no exaggeration, 3 or 4 times the coverage we saw last year. Last year was 3 or 4 times the coverage we saw the year before that. It is exponential. So I wanted to ask David Icke, in closing, and I'm going to throw the interview over to Mike Adams and David, again, just how historical this is, what he thinks Bilderberg is thinking, and what he thinks the establishment is going to do to strike back because humanity is waking up. And then I'll be back tomorrow live, hosting probably an hour and a half or so with David Knight. We're going to have live video feeds, live audio feeds, text, chat, all of it. As stuff breaks, we'll have live feeds that then get archived at Infowars.com/Bilderberg. And I want to ask listeners and viewers, even if you can't come to this event in England, because I understand it's a great expense. Believe me, it's hard for us to come and bring this crew in. It is so important that you spread the word about the demonstrations and about the press, and that you write articles yourself, or blurbs, or you do YouTube videos about what's happening. So David, that's my final question for you, and then I'm going to turn the show for the rest of the hour over to you and Mike Adams. David Icke, how important is it for people around the world to talk about this on the internet and to watch our video streams, listen to our audio streams, and give this attention and focus on the resistance?
Well, it's a simple situation. that which wishes to be secret, that which works in the shadows, that which wishes to keep what it's doing secret from the public, then the antidote for that is the opposite. It's making what they're doing as public as possible. And we've reached the point, we have reached this critical point where people in enough numbers are starting to see it, that the difference is starting to cause a shift. Because, once you have a certain number of people that know something, then that number of people tell another number of people. Then now you've got a bigger number of people, and they tell people from their level of awareness, much greater numbers, and the exponential curve starts to turn towards the sky. And this is where we are now. We're at this point where they can't keep it secret anymore. And, the experience you've just described at the airport, I've had that in different airports around the world. I've had it in Australia, where they tried to think of a way in exactly the same way. How can we think of a credible way of not letting this guy in? But then they go, well, hold on a second. If we do stop the fella, it's going to cause more publicity for what they're doing than if we just let him in. And so if you, it's like I said on my website, when they decided that they were going to have an area for people at this Bilderberg event. Look what happens when you won't take no from the system. This is what we must understand. But David, you've got to tell them what you did. You've got to tell them what you did, though. You look at the number of people who are almost certainly going to turn up this weekend, and you look at the number of people in the hotel at the Bilderberg event. There will be far more turning up to make their feelings known than people in that hotel. Now, think that the people in that hotel, tiny number, are making decisions and manipulating and coordinating events that are going to play out as change in policy all over the world. Sure. This is not the tail wagging the dog. It's not the tail wagging the elephant. It's the tail wagging the planet that we're looking at. And we have to realize that when we start to understand the power we have in numbers, the power we have when we say, no, we're not having it, then the house of cards will come down, because that's what it is. A house of cards, which is we are holding together by our ignorance and by our acquiescence. We're starting to remove the ignorance for large numbers of people are starting to see it. Now we have to remove the acquiescence and show ourselves in numbers that the game is up. This may not be the end. It's nothing like the end. But as Churchill once said, it may perhaps be the end of the beginning, and I think it is. It's the end of this stage where we've been building up to this point where there's enough awareness now, gathering all the time, that we can go on onto the next stage, and that is dismantling this bloody nonsense and bringing an end to it. Because these powerful people on this list in front of me, they're little boys in short trousers. That's what they are. Pathetic little people playing little games with the lives of the population of the world. And we say enough, it's over. And we can make a mighty statement this weekend that enough is the point we've reached.
All right, Mike Adams, you take it over. I just want to thank all of you. I want to thank the crew, because I'm punching out now. And I want to thank all of you, the listeners, our affiliates, everybody. I just have a real feeling of thankfulness to everybody that loves liberty that we've gotten to this point. And we're not hyping this, folks. This is a big deal. Mike Adams, you take over till 5 after with David Icke. Then Gerald Celente is coming up. And again, ladies and gentlemen, all the news at Infowars.com/Bilderberg, DavidIcke.com, and, of course, naturalnews.com. But again, just amazing. I'm going to turn it over. Mike, you bring up some wild card questions here for David Icke, and I'll see everybody back tomorrow on the show. Alex Jones signing off for now. Back to David Icke.
You bet. Thank you, Alex, for that live report. And David, yeah, it's an honor to be able to speak with you. You probably know I'm a big fan of you and your work. But
it's a real pleasure to talk to you for the first time, Mike. It'll be a first with Alex, meeting Alex in a few days. So, yeah, it's good we all come together, because this is what we need to do.
Absolutely. And, you know, I've read all your books, and I've watched your presentations. And in the context of Bilderberg, here's my opening question for you on this. You know, you talk about the nature of reality. You talk about the interaction between consciousness and reality. When we look at Bilderbergers, they are, in essence, engineers of illusion. They're trying to fabricate a reality that the people then must exist in, like in the Matrix. So I'd like you to speak to that role of the Bilderberg members of being sort of engineers of illusion and how we can see through that illusion and awaken to reality.
Well, this is it's a massive question, but
I know.
Is, an area that, you know, I think everyone in the area of alternative media and people looking for answers to what's going on in the world, we really do need to get this deep and deeper to understand the true nature of what is going on. Because if we stay only in the realm of the five senses, then we're staying on the movie screen. We're not actually exploring where the movie's coming from. And if you go deep in the rabbit hole, you're looking at entities, I'll call it a force, which is talked about using different names all over the world, in all the ancient cultures, and they manipulated human genetics in total, and specifically manipulated human genetics to create particular hybrid bloodlines, which are representing this force in our reality. We call these bloodlines the Illuminati families. They're the ones that sit on top the banking system, the governments, the corporations, and all the rest of it. So what you're looking at is these rich and powerful people, so-called, they are representing this hidden force. In their rituals, they are interacting with this force. This is what Satanism is. And so they understand that what we're living in is not a physical reality. That's the illusion. It is a holographic reality, illusory reality. And if you look at how holograms, you know, simple holograms you buy in the shops are made, the basic information that creates the hologram is not what you see as an apparently three-dimensional image. It's actually information on a waveform print. And then you fire a laser at the waveform print, which looks just like a fingerprint, really, when you see them in close-up. And suddenly, that laser activates information that gives the illusion of a three-dimensional figure or image, whatever the holographic film has been taken of. And the best of them can look as solid as you and me. Now, but you see, the hologram only exists because of the information on the print. And the nature of what the hologram is, whether it's a person or a box or a ball or whatever, is dictated by the information on the waveform print. So they know, because this is how our reality works, that what we think of as the physical world is just a holographic projection from information fields, waveform information fields beyond the frequency range of human sight. But we can feel it. We feel this energy all the time. Oh, got good vibes. Oh, got bad vibes. All the rest of it. And so it's at that level, Mike, that they're manipulating our reality. They know that what's the point in manipulating the hologram? The hologram's just a projection of something else. It's the something else they want to manipulate.
Right.
And therefore they do these endless rituals, and a lot of them are absolutely in public sight, like the pomp and ceremony of the royalty in Britain. You know, all the marching soldiers and royal rituals and all this stuff. These are all manipulating energy, and when you get deeper into it, you realize that they've created basically a constant ritual that we call human life, in which if they can manipulate us, for instance, to feel fear, to feel anxiety, to feel stress, anger, and frustration, then that generates an energy, because everything's energy, and you are pouring that energy into the Earth's energy field, magnetic field, and that is affecting the field in its entirety, because you know you've only got to see what they found when you had the 9/11 attacks, And
oh yeah, they were feeding off all that fear.
That are picking up changes in the Earth's energy field, Earth's magnetic field. The spike at the time of the attacks, when the public became globally aware of it, was absolutely fantastic. And that was caused by the human collective emotional reaction to those attacks. Now, this is what they're manipulating, and this is why they, like I say, they'll do their ritual, which is what this Bilderberg thing is all about. So what the long-term story of this is that over a vast amount of what we call time, these entities hidden from human sight, outside of the human visual range, through their network of hybrid families in this reality, have been changing our planet, changing the reality, changing the atmosphere, changing it genetically in the ways I was just talking about. The GMO is what it's all about.
Right.
Because remember, it's not just GMO of human beings and GMO food. It's the genetic modification of the entire natural world. They're having genetically modified grass and lawns now. They're bringing in everything. They want to genetically modify everything because the atmosphere and the planet that these entities can stand and therefore can interact with as they can't now is very different to the one that is good for humans, and that's what we're seeing. And this is why there is no, when you understand this is why there is no contradiction between these people who are manipulating events in the world to destroy it from a human point of view, while at the same time they appear to be living in it. Well, why would they destroy their own world? Well, they're not like us. That's the point. And the key that really connects Bilderberg here and Google is transhumanism, which is not transhumanism at all. It's dehumanism. It's dehumanization. The more that you can turn someone from a consciousness into a machine, which is like a computer, it can have the power of thought, the power of decision-making, but it's not actually conscious in the greater human sense. The more you can turn them into machines and fuse them with the machines, the more power you have over them, and the less power they have, because their energetic power, their power of consciousness, is constantly being eroded by the machines, the technology that are being fused with. So you look at Google, and Google is absolutely there and has been from the start to lead this fusing of technology with humans. I have this thing I call the totalitarian tiptoe, where you start at A and you're going to Z, and you go in steps because you don't want to go too big, or people might say what's going on.
Sure.
And you look at what Google are doing. This thing, Google Glass, the computer on the
wearable computing,
and stuff like that. All this stuff going on at this secret laboratory, Google X, and all the rest of it. It's all connected to fusing and
hey, David, we're going to break. Sorry to cut you off there, David, but we're going to break. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this break, and we'll continue with David Icke from davidicke.com. Stay with us here on The Alex Jones Show. All right, continuing our interview with David Icke from davidicke.com. This is Mike Adams filling in for Alex, who is in the UK at the Bilderberg conference, which begins later this week. Now, in the last segment, David gave us a bewildering tour of a lot of fascinating concepts, including the actual terraforming of the planet and some unseen forces that are at work. And continuing with that, David, I wanted to ask you, people are fed up with their food being genetically engineered, but they don't yet realize how their reality is being engineered, how their fears are being engineered. I mean, so much of what we get from the government and these people at the Bilderberg conference is what I would call fear engineering. You spoke to that a little bit in the last segment. Can you give us a little more explanation of why fear is such a crucial element to their global domination plan?
Well, yeah, I was just saying, Mike, about the Google agenda with the transhumanism and what have you. And I just want to throw in one more quick thing just to connect all this with Bilderberg. Bilderberg, its job is to basically sell pushing into public policy this dehumanization agenda. So in the Bilderberg meetings, the interface with the Google event that's been going on, and of course Eric Schmidt, the Google executive chairman, will be at the Bilderberg meeting, according to the list that's come out. Their job is then to push that through the politicians there and the administrators and what have you into public policy. And it's interesting that the head of DARPA, this sinister, deeply sinister technological development arm of the Pentagon, that's really on a military level running this whole transhumanist agenda and developing the technology to push it on, was Regina Duggan. Regina Duggan left DARPA and became a executive of Google. And this very week, Mike, she was, as also she is an executive of Motorola, she was expounding the benefits of replacing passwords with a electronic tattoo, which is one step only from an under-the-skin microchip. Right. So this is how all these things are running through. And what they use, as you point out, is fear. Fear has many levels and connotations for this whole story. But one of them is, when you get people in fear, they will look outside of themselves for someone or something to protect them from what they've been manipulated to fear. This is why all the way through history, these bloodlines have used the bogeyman, the big bad monsters come in and all the rest of it to frighten people into giving their power away. And we must stop being frightened of all the fake bogeys and threats that they're throwing at us. And we can only really do that, again, when we start to understand the nature of our own reality. You know, when we look in the mirror and we think of ourselves as Charlie Smith or Ethel Jones, little me, then of course you're going to look for all these powerful people to save us and all that rest of it. When you realize that Ethel Jones and Charlie Smith is just an experience. It's just a name for an experience. What we are is not our body or our name. It is that consciousness, the infinite awareness that we all are, always have been and always will be.
Got about 30 seconds, David.
Animating that body. That's the true self. And if you look at it, Mike, society has been set up to get people to have their point of attention, the point at which they observe everything, to the five senses, to the body level of reality.
David.
And if they can do that and cut us off from consciousness and then control the information...
Thank you, David. We got to go to break. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but thank you. Fascinating information. David Icke from davidicke.com. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We are into the third hour, continuing our interview with David Icke on the nature of reality and how reality is manipulated by global controllers to put you into a state of constant fear so that you need to beg for authority to tell you what to do, or at least that's part of how it works. And it reminds me, David, and this is our last segment with you, and then Gerald Celente takes over after this segment, but it reminds me there was a story that was just posted. This one's by Anthony Gucciardi. The LAPD was caught in an intense armed standoff with the Call of Duty video game statue at the headquarters of the company that makes the Call of Duty video games. They had a statue of a guy with a rifle, and the police, the LAPD, thought that statue was a threat to them. Now, isn't that a great metaphor for what they have the people doing?
What they've done, Mike, as you well know in America, this happening everywhere, is that they have spent decades systematically changing the personality of the police force and law enforcement. The old genuine copper, the old genuine police officer who used a bit of common sense and thought he was there to serve the people, or she was there to serve the people, they've been sifted out and sifted out and sifted out. Some of them still exist. It must be a nightmare to work in the system as it is now. But most of them have been sifted out, and so many of these narcissistic psychopaths have come in. And this is why YouTube is full of these unbelievable violent scenes of police upon innocent people. But they've also used the training. This, of course, this happens in the military all the time, to literally program the minds of law enforcement people who will allow their minds to fall for it. And what they've turned out are people who have no sense of looking at a situation and making a judgment on the circumstances. They, every time I see them symbolically, I see a big slot in their head and a rule book pushed in, or a microchip pushed in, and it's basically they find it impossible to make a decision by their own initiative. It's like they're robots. That's what they've been turned into.
Sure.
And then you get these ridiculous stories. I know I've seen some on your site from time to time. You find them all over the place. These incredible stories where, you know, people. What was this one that's been running the last few days? A young kid at school makes as an experiment. He goes off with a bit of a bang, and they arrest her for a destructive weapon. I mean, only the mindless and the brain dead could possibly react to
hey, Pop-Tarts shaped like guns, bubble guns.
Because they're serving the system by doing so.
Right. Yeah, you name it. It's they've bought into the illusion at such a deep level that they can't see reality now, and we've put them in charge of, you know, policing our society. It's quite frightening.
Yeah, and you know, if you look at society, it's always been like this, but never more than now in terms of those that run it. It's completely inverted. You take anything that, you know, society sees as normal, or, you know, to be desired or to be admired, and you've got to turn it absolutely on its head to see the real truth. And I've said this before, if you're born into a madhouse, and basically the manipulation of the human perception, and the fact that absolute clinical insane people have been running the world for so long, they have created a madhouse.
David,
born in a madhouse.
Got it.
And
we're going to a break, David.
Madness.
I think David's having trouble hearing me. But David Icke, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you being on the show. It's a pleasure to talk with you. DavidIcke.com is the website, everyone. And thank you again, David, for joining us today. We're back. This is the third hour of the Alex Jones Show on this Monday, June 3rd. Thank you for joining us. And in this hour, we continue with Gerald Celente taking over the broadcast. And as many of you know, he is my favorite guest when he's a guest on the show. He's actually going to be a host here in a minute. And before I turn it over to Gerald, I got to say that for all of you out there, Gerald Celente is absolutely brilliant. Not only does he get the numbers right, he nails it time and time again on all the issues that matter, especially economics and finance, but he's also entertaining. He's fun to listen to. He's a brilliant linguist. He likes to play with words and give us new words and phrases to use that stick in our minds and drive home key concepts. I love the guy. I love what he's doing. So I'm going to sign off right now. This is Mike Adams signing off, turning it over to Gerald Celente, who begins with economic news. Take it away, Gerald.
Oh, thank you, Mike. And you're one of my favorites, too, as is naturalnews.com. There's not a lot of natural news out there, so it's really refreshing to see what you guys do. I appreciate it very much. And thank you, Alex Jones, for having me as a host on the Alex Jones Show today. It's an honor and a privilege. And what I'm going to do today, Mike and everyone, is what we do every day for subscribers to the Trends Journal. And that is from Monday to Friday, we do Trends in the News. So we're going to start off with today's Trends in the News, talking about gold. Because, you know, gold is golden. It's been around for civilizations, and it still makes a big difference of what's going on. And gold prices today have bounced up as I speak, about $24, $25. This is a very important mark, by the way, as a trend forecaster. It's very important that gold stays above the $1,400 mark, as it is right now, So it really determines where gold is going to go over the short period and long term if gold stays above this crucial point. Now, why is gold going up today? Well, the news is that manufacturing numbers fall, unexpectedly drop, according to Bloomberg. Most U.S. stocks fell, leaving the Standard & Poor's 500 index at its lowest in nearly 3 weeks after manufacturing unexpectedly contracted in May, indicating industry will provide scant support for the economy. So what's the other side of that? More Qs. QE1, QE2, QE3, QE to infinity. So that's what we're seeing. That's why gold is going up, because there is no recovery. It's an artificial recovery. It's an interest rate recovery, as I call it. Look, in the old days, when I was a kid, people used to put money in the bank and they used to retire on the interest that they got from it. That's right. That's ancient history in Slavelandia, the new name for America, the merger of state and corporate powers. And now it's the USA, China. That's what's really going on over here. So going back to interest rates, there aren't any. You put your money in the banksters make the dough, and you get nothing for return. So what does that mean? You're forced to speculate in the equity markets. That's one of the other reasons the equity markets are going up. People have no place to put their money. So it's an interest rate recovery because interest rates are at historic lows. We're celebrating the 100th year of the Federal Reserve taking over the country. That's right, the Federal Reserve Act in 1913, 100 years ago, gave them the power to regulate and control the supply of money. Now they've regulated to the point where they just keep pumping the money in. Stimulus, of course, is white shoe boy language for printing cheap money. And the other thing is low interest rates. So gold is going up because manufacturing is going down. There is no recovery. It's only temporary, an interest rate recovery. And what's boosting it is home sales and the construction industry on one end. Again, only temporary. Construction spending level edges higher in April. Now remember, it's only edging higher in April after record low interest rates. Total construction spending registered a small gain in April. Surging home and apartment construction, volatile private non-residential activity, and shrinking public investment brings the whole report around. New apartment and home construction were the standouts. Okay, here's the deal. New apartment construction. That's because people can't afford to buy a home. Yeah, that's right. Because young people, back in the old days, when they got out of college, they didn't have $30, $40, $50, $60, $70,000, $100,000 in debt. Yeah, they could buy homes. But now, of course, all the jobs that are coming out stink. Here's a story from The Exchange. The real reason millennials don't buy cars and homes. Well, the percentage of 16 to 24-year-olds with driver's licenses dropped sharply since 1997 and is now below 70% for the first time since 1963. You know why they can't buy cars and they're not buying them? They got no dough. The jobs stink. Here, look at the numbers here. I'm not making this up. Wealth from economic recovery has gone to the richest Americans. Top 1% got 93% of income growth as rich-poor gap widened. Oh, this story came out on Saturday when no one was paying attention. Saturday is the least followed news day of the week. And this isn't from a communist paper. It's from Bloomberg. Yeah. Since it goes on, the numbers are right here. The 1.2 million households whose income put them at the top 1% of the U.S. saw their earnings increase 5.5% last year, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. So this isn't like, you know, a lefty organization making these numbers up. While earnings fell 1.7% for the 96 million households in the bottom 80%. Those that made less than $101,583. In 2010, the top 1% of families captured as much as 93% of the nation's income. The earnings gap between rich and poor Americans was the widest in more than 4 decades in 2011. Now, check this out. You know, like when you're walking down the street or you go into some of these supermarkets, and man, Madone, it really looks bad out there. When you look at some of the people, your eyes are telling the truth. Here, now remember, this is from the Census Bureau. Census data shows surpassing income inequality previously reported in the United States is surpassing income inequality previously reported in Uganda and Kazakhstan. All right? I mean, I've never been to Uganda or Kazakhstan, but I know, you know, they're not at the top of the pyramid when it comes to quality in life. And neither is the United States. Even the meandering economy generated 4.6 million private sector jobs since February 2010. Almost 40% of them were in the fields of hospitality. Don't you love the word hospitality? That means making somebody's bed in a hotel. It means room service. It means waiting on tables. It means jobs that pay crap while the fat cats keep getting fatter and everybody else keeps getting poorer. Temporary staffing, where the average wage is below $15 an hour. About 11.7% of middle-income families owned stock in 2010, down from 14% in 2007. So when they're talking about a rising stock market, the money's only going to the top. Although U.S. consumer spending climbed to its highest level in 4 years in August, according to the Gallup survey, it still lags 2008 levels by more than 20%. And what are people buying? Hey, have a lovely time at Family Dollar because that's all you have to spend. It just keeps getting worse. From 1979 to 2007, about $1.1 trillion in annual income shifted to the top 1% of Americans. So there you got it. Those are the numbers. The numbers don't lie, but the people that are saying that there's a recovery, they're lying. As a matter of fact, making fun of the gold news is none other than Nouriel Roubini, who they call Dr. Doom. He says that, gold prices really don't make a difference because, after all, gold isn't a medium of exchange. You know, you could store it, but it's really not a unit of wealth that you can exchange for product and services. He says you can't buy groceries with it. Tell that to the Iranians and tell it to the Chinese. Because you know why? They're exchanging oil for gold. Get it, Nouriel? All right. So as I was saying, gold. I'm in gold for the long term. I want to make this perfectly clear. I don't call tops or bottoms. This is an interest rate recovery all over the world. The Japanese with their stimulus, the Europeans with their stimulus, all over the world they're pumping in cheap dough. And as I said, here's the quote from Nouriel Roubini. Gold is not a means of payment. You cannot pay for your groceries with it, nor is it a unit to account. You can't buy prices of goods and services are not denominated in gold terms. Again, tell that to the Iranians and the Chinese. I think the Persians and the Chinese, by the way, have been around a lot longer than Nouriel Roubini. Gold is real, and when times get tough, gold for me is what to have in your hand. You know, Gerald Celente's GCs, 3Gs, guns, gold, and a getaway plan when it hits the fan. Hey, from Al Jazeera, Iraq sees deadliest month since 2008. UN Chief's representative urges an end to the bloodshed as toll of civilians and security personnel cross 1,000. Hey, remember all of those people that said, hey, Iraq is a better place without Saddam Hussein, and it was worth the war? You know, the $1 trillion spent and the 1 million people killed, plus our soldiers that have lost their lives, limbs, and their minds. Here, check out this video. Look what these psychopaths said.
I think the removal of Saddam Hussein was the right decision.
We are safer, more secure, that Iraq is better, but our own security is better. With Saddam and his two sons out of power and out of office than in office, I believe indeed that we are.
But Saddam Hussein was a unique threat, and the world is better off without him in power.
What we did in Iraq was the right thing to do. It was hard to do. It took a long time. There were significant costs involved.
It was the right thing to do, and the world is a safer place for having that message.
Yes or no, did the Iraq War make America safer?
Yes, absolutely. Can you imagine what the world would be like with Saddam Hussein in control of the third largest oil reserves in the world, in the heart of the Middle East?
These guys are psychopaths. Look at them. Did you hear that? The porky pig of politics over there, Karl Rove, with his last statement? What was Saddam Hussein in charge of, the third largest oil reserves in the Middle East? It's none of our business. You don't attack foreign countries because you want their goods and services. Or maybe imperialists do, and immoral people like you, porky pig. This is disgusting. You want to know how America could come back? People ask me all the time. It's very simple. Do what the founding fathers suggested. Stay out of foreign entanglements. No, Iraq is not better off without Saddam Hussein, and neither is the rest of the world, because from Iraq also came Al-Qaeda, more of Al-Qaeda. And where is Al-Qaeda now? Oh, they're over there in Libya. You remember Libya? That was the place that Chicken Hawk Cameron, Sarkozy, and Obama were going to free up to get rid of that dictator, Gaddafi. And now look what happened. Al-Qaeda's in charge over there. Now they're destabilizing Syria. This is madness. And the madmen are in control. Oh, a great little story coming out in the Financial Times today. China is doing a big deal with Iraq. Another big deal for China. While the United States wages war, China wages business. And they're waging business right here in the good old USA. Yeah, you remember that news last week? China's buying up Smithfield. Yeah, the biggest pork producer in the United States, or one of them. Yeah. And what else is China buying up? Oh, even buying up Club Med. They're buying up the world. Oh, the Prime Minister Xi, he is down in the Caribbean now, making deals all over the region. While America, what are they doing? We got John Kerry, the ketchup king, you know, Heinz's little boy, going all over the world, talking about more war with Syria, and how we have to support the rebels, and how we're sending more troops into the area. And now talking about expansion into Asia. And when I come back, we're going to talk more about pigs, porks, and rats. Hey, this is Gerald Celente, and I'm back, and I'm happy to be a host on the Alex Jones Show as he's over there exposing the Bilderberg bullies who are taking control of the entire globe. It's a takeover. The multinationals are in control. And now it's coming back right here to the United States. Even the Chinese are grabbing a piece of the action. As I mentioned, they're buying Smithfield up, one of those big pork producers, and a lot of labels out there that you're all familiar with. Here's a story in today's New York Times. The self-proclaimed paper of record, which I like to call the toilet paper of record. Chinese bid for U.S. pork had links to Wall Street. You see what I mean? That is a BS line. How nice they say it. How about a criminal operation where the mafia is all working together to pull off another big deal that's going to screw the people short-term, long-term? That would have been more appropriate, but I digress. Let me move on. When a Chinese company bid $4.7 billion last week to take over Smithfield's, America's biggest pork producer, the deal was announced by the company's Chinese executives. But behind the bid was a group of savvy investors. Savvy investors, you know what that means? Savvy investors is a BS line for the guys in that are doing the deal in a rigged game that know how it's going to fall out and put all their bets down as the suckers stand around the table thinking they're going to win the game. It's an inside deal, but we'll call them savvy investors because that's nice and proper. And global deal makers, again, a BS word, who hold a substantial stake in the Chinese company. Oh, and you know who those global deal makers are and savvy investors? Goldman Sachs! The Goldman Sachs gang, yeah! CDH Investments, Singapore's sovereign wealth fund, and New Horizon Capital, a private equity firm founded by the son of the former Chinese Prime Minister, Wen Jiabao. You get it? The group controls nearly half the shares of Shanghai International, much of which was acquired about 7 years ago by helping privatize the company that had been run by a state-owned meat processor. It's all inside deals. Privatization, by the way, that too is white shoe boy language for selling expensive public assets to your buddies on inside deals for pennies on the dollar. So here you got it. The Chinese buying Smithfield. This company, by the way, is a huge pork producer. Now check this out. These are the Chinese. Rat meat and Chinese food safety. This was only May 12th. It isn't ancient history. The latest food scandal in China, which has seen rat meat passed off as lamb, has raised more questions about food safety in the country. Okay? And then there's that bird flu thing going on. And now people also forgot, this is from March 20th, the number of dead pigs pulled out of the Hangpu River in Shanghai crossed 10,000 since the city government started fishing out the pig carcasses about 2 weeks ago. Now, let me get this straight. They got pigs floating down the Hangpu, and now they're taking over the biggest pig producer in the United States. What are we going to have now? Pigs floating down the Potomac? I mean, that's all it is. Pigs to pigs. I think they should change, the symbols of the Democratic and Republican parties. The elephants are the pigs, and the Democrats are the rats. That's right. The Democrats are the rats that began to sell America out full-time with Bill Clinton's NAFTA. And, of course, the elephant pigs, they started, paving the deal with Nixon playing ping pong over there in China to get the deals rolling. So now you could see what's happening. As I said, as the United States wages war, China wages business. And now they're taking over America. There's another side to the Chinese pig story and those gluttons that sold out Smithfield. You see, the Chinese food, I love it, by the way. You go into a health food store, this is one of my favorite. I don't eat corporate food. And I'm Italian, I like to cook, and I have a wonderful recipe that I make with broccoli and pignoli nuts and olives, porchietti, nice fine olive oil, and a couple of other ingredients like capers. So I like pignoli nuts. I go into the health food store. The pignoli nuts come from China. Oh yeah, guaranteed to be organic. And I got a bridge for you to buy over there in Brooklyn. And I'll give it to you at a good price. The Chinese, once they have established their companies in the United States, now could be bringing in more of their crappy products and sell it to us and pass it off whatever they want. Oh, and by the way, only about 2% or less of imported product is looked at and tested by the FDA and the Agricultural Department. So virtually nothing is being looked at. And by the way, as a trend forecaster, what you look at when you look at this trend is to see what the opportunities in food, natural, as in natural news, natural food, natural healing. That is the future. Entrepreneurs understanding that not everybody watches the Kardashians. Not everybody tunes in the Cartoon News Network, CNN, the most trusted name in news. So there are a lot of people that are very concerned about their health. And health is going to continue to be one of the biggest motivators for profit opportunities among those who look for whole health healing, as myself, to be the major trend as we continue to move into the 21st century and continue to see a population that's aging and a very sizable segment of it looking to age healthy. Because in the words of Mr. Boogie, you got to boogie before the lights go out, because tomorrow is iffy. So you need to stay in good health to boogie now, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Health, nutrition, fitness. And by the way, there is a renaissance already taking place. And the renaissance is in food. Break the chains. You hear me say it all the time. Now check it out. Use your head. If the Chinese are going to be taking over the nation's largest pork producer, and they're being taken over by a company that is already one of the largest pork producers in the world, guess what you're going to get at those chain food places and all that fast food crap that you eat? You're going to get Chinese pork. It's already disgusting food, the way agribusiness has destroyed it and what they've done to these poor animals, this inhumane conditions. Now you can guarantee it's even going to get worse. So remember, the future is in food. You know, talking about China, by the way, little note that comes out, kind of things you look at for as a trend forecaster. And this, again, this is over the weekend. The news doesn't come out very big. It's buried in the second section of the Financial Times, way down on the bottom. Iron ore route amid mounting concern over China demand. Iron ore prices suffered their sharpest fall in more than a year this week, as steel traders and mills rushed to dump their stocks amid fears over the outlook for China demand. So things are slowing down globally. Again, the only way they're going to pump the markets up is by pumping money into them. And the more money they pump in, the higher gold prices should go. And again, we're not only looking at problems in the United States. Hey, over the weekend, you know, as they were talking about stupid crap on CNN and continue to do so, or on MSNBC, you know, mindless news for nobody, and CBS and ABC, etc., a little story came out. Anti-austerity protests held across Europe. Gee, I wonder why. Demonstrations take place in Greece, Spain, Portugal, and Germany as anger against continent-wide austerity pressures grows. These are not austerity pressures. These are robbing the people to give the money to the people that have all the money already. That's what austerity measures are. Austerity measures means raising taxes, cutting services, killing your pensions and benefits, and increasing the age of retirement until after you die. And I'm sick of hearing that term, entitlements. Social Security is not an entitlement. Medical benefits are not an entitlement. Just to get this straight, for anybody that's too stupid to read or too deaf to hear, we put tons of our money that they steal from us, from every damn paycheck, in Social Security and federal taxes. And then when it's time for us to get it back, they say, screw you. They're entitlements. And we'll give them back to you if we feel like it. But meanwhile, we're going to give you less back than we promised. And you know why? Because the pigs and the rats are in control. The Democrats and the Republicans. I'm a political atheist, as you know. I don't believe in any of these religious political parties. Politics has become a religion, and I don't bow to political gods. Oh, you know that guy Dingle you got over there that's been screwing you people over there in Michigan all these years? The cat's going on to his 57th year. 57th year as a public servant. A public servant. Hey, Dingle, I got some toilets to get cleaned. Public servant. These guys are just sucking off the public tit their entire life. They never work a day in their lives. And there are loads of them. Loads of them. Just look through Congress. I want to see term limits. Enough of this baloney. The same thing goes on around the world. It's no different over here. As I speak, they're demonstrating over there in Turkey. Yeah, you know that place that wants to get into the European Union all the time, but they never let them. But always when they need soldiers to kill and NATO troops, boy, the Turks are on the front line doing that work. They were in South Korea rather. They were in Vietnam. They were in Iraq. Oh, yeah. Always waging war, but they're not quite in the money game yet. Well, they're having their problems there, too. Here's the headline from the Financial Times. Turkey's protests reignite. Yep. In a series of television appearances following the occupation of Taksim Square, Recep Erdogan, that's the prime minister, dismissed protesters across the country's biggest cities as looters. He described Twitter as a curse and branded anyone who drank alcohol an alcoholic. Yeah, you look at this photo of these protesters. They certainly don't look like looters, alcoholics who have been cursed by Twitters. You couldn't have more middle-class looking cats in your life. But to make this point, Erdogan says many protesters say that his authoritarian tendencies on the part of his regime are the root cause of the scale of discontent, citing measures such as a new law to restrict the consumption of alcohol. Quote, "I do these things because I love all my citizens. I want them to get rid of their bad habits." All right, now you get it? I do these things because I love all my citizens. Hey, Junior, see if you can handle this one. How about doing what your citizens tell you to do? Could you handle that? No. None of them can handle it. Look what goes on. Every time these cats come out, man, they roll out the red carpets, whether it's the presidents, the prime ministers, the chancellors, you name the country. They got enough flunkies standing around saluting and blowing trumpets. You want to cut back the budget and save money, put these people to work. Why do they got to roll out a red carpet? Listen, the next time I come on the Alex Jones Show, I want trumpets. You guys stand up and salute. Who made this crap up? And that's what's going on, and it goes back to Bilderberg. They're all better than we are. They tell us what to do. The New World Order has taken over, and you don't have to look behind the curtains to see it. It's the banking order. It's the money junkies, and it's the military-industrial complex. Hey, our new Secretary of Defense, he's over there now talking about America expanding into Asia with its, quote, pivot Asia operation. How about pivoting back home? Check the number out. Over $6 trillion, that's with a T, has been spent on the Afghan and Iraq war. Bring the money home. $6 trillion for USA. Thank you for having me back, Alex Jones. All the best of good fortune over there in Bilderberg, exposing the global takeover by the New World Order, the banking order, the money junkie order, and the military-industrial complex. And as I was saying as we went into break, imagine $6 trillion spent on the Afghan and Iraq wars for nothing, to only destroy two countries and destroy the lives of millions of people, including our troops, who have lost their lives, their limbs, many of their minds, committing suicide and getting very little when they come back. I want our money back in America. I believe in what the Founding Fathers stood for. No foreign entanglements. And there's going to be more foreign entanglements. As I was mentioning, our Secretary of State, Chuck Hagel, is over there pushing for Pivot Asia. Singapore, U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel toward the U.S. Navy's small combat ship, the USS Freedom. Boy, what did they ask Orwell to leave notes to name these things after he passed away? Like Patriot missiles? You know, I love that one, too. The first of a new class of littoral warships recently deployed to Asia to partner with allies in the region. Oh, yeah, allies like Japan. You remember them, yeah. Tora, yeah, that Japan. The Pearl Harbor Japan, our allies. Anyway, his visit to the ship on Sunday comes amid nagging questions about the cost and viability of the roughly $34 billion program. And the Pentagon buying 42 pieces of this crap. You know how much junk that they keep making and throwing away? When I wrote Trend Tracking back in 1988, the government had already spent $13 trillion on the Cold War. General Dwight D. Eisenhower warned us that the military-industrial complex was robbing us of the genius of our scientists, the sweat of our laborers, and the future of our children. It's right here in black and white. It's being robbed. And what they're also talking about, UK to ship arms if Syria talks fail. This is from the Financial Times. Britain and France this week forced through an amendment to a UN arms embargo that opened the door for supply of weapons to the opposition forces. In recent weeks, the U.S. has secretly undertaken significant lobbying of EU member states in order to get the EU arms embargo amended, the officials said. Hey, you know where this comes from? No, not the World Socialist newspaper, not the Progressive, not Counterpunch, the Financial Times. It's as obvious as that. The U.S. is setting us up for a new war in Syria. And now they're talking about a no-fly zone. Yeah, you know what that is. You remember that one in Libya. A no-fly zone means they bomb the hell out of the government that's in control. And you listen to what every one of the prostitutes repeat from the government officials: Assad has to go. I say if they want him to go, any of those officials that want him to go take him out and leave us out of your psycho trip. World leader death match. Obama wants Assad out. Let's put him in the arena and let him fight it out and keep us out of it, like the real warriors used to do. I want to thank Alex Jones again. And remember, please look us up at trendsjournal.com. The Trends Journal, the only place you'll get history before it happens. And that was some of today's Trends in the News.
It is your PrisonPlanet.tv memberships that fund so much of what we do here on this operation. And then we're more than happy for the TV show after it's aired live, then be leaked out onto the web to tens of millions of people. That's our goal.
Welcome to the Alex Jones Show. It is Monday, June 3rd, 2013. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, filling in for Alex today, who is in the UK. He has successfully arrived there. They did not kick him out of the country. At least I haven't heard about it. If they did, and I'm sure we'd be the first to hear. So he's there getting ready for the Bilderberg conference, and he's going to be joining us, in fact, in the second hour today, calling in, also joined by David Icke in the second hour. In fact, today is a show that's just packed with great personalities. We've got Gerald Celente hosting the third hour, and I'm just here for the first hour to get things rolling. So breaking news today on Drudge. In fact, Drudge is linking to this right now. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that police can take DNA swabs from arrestees. Just like taking your fingerprints, they can now take your DNA. We're going to talk about this during the first hour of the Alex Jones Show here, why this is such a big deal. It means that the government can take your DNA essentially anytime they want and enter it into a database that will be used against you. Now, every power that we give to the federal government turns out to be used against us in ways that never could have been imagined by our founding fathers. So this is a very disturbing decision by the Supreme Court, and it was a sharply divided court that made this decision. There were 4 dissenting justices who said that the court was allowing police to have a significant change, a significant expansion in police powers. So we're going to talk about that, but it turns out that your DNA, this is the big story really, your DNA is now claimed to be owned by the federal government, and they can do anything they want with it. In fact, there have been cases still happening right now where medical science has ripped off the DNA of patients and used it to create cancer tumors that they use for experimental purposes to study anti-cancer drugs, and they never pay that patient any kind of royalty, and they don't intend to. So we've got that story coming up. Also, the official Bilderberg attendee list has been released, and this is posted right now on Infowars.com. We've got the full list. We're going to break down for you some of the big names who that are on that list, because it is a big deal. We get you because of your genetic code. This is a very dangerous precedent, and it will be abused. Mark my words here on this day on the Alex Jones Show. My prediction is that this will be abused in highly destructive ways against the American people. So the Supreme Court has just sent us down a hellish path of abuse of police powers over our DNA. Now, on the DNA topic, and by the way, bringing back up Angelina Jolie, who continues to be in the media for her decision to have both of her breasts removed, even though they were perfectly healthy breasts. She did not have cancer. She just had a gene that's supposed to be linked with cancer. And I strongly criticized Angelina's decision. I didn't criticize her as a person. I don't know her. I can't really criticize her. I'm criticizing her decision. But the reason this is important is because right now, today, 4,000 human genes are owned and patented by corporations and universities. Did you know that? 4,000 of your genes. Now, the human body has about 20,000 genes. 4,000 of those, or roughly 20%, are patented by someone else. What does this mean? It means you don't even own your own genetic code. You follow me on this? Somebody else claims to own your code. Who gave them that claim over your human body? Who gave them that right to claim they own it? The U.S. government. The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office gave them that claim. They handed out your genes to other corporations and universities. And what are those corporations and universities doing with that monopoly, that patent that they've been given by the U.S. Patent Office? They're using it to charge you monopoly prices on the testing of those genes. That's right. So all those women who are listening to Angelina Jolie and are saying, well, gee, I should go get tested for the BRCA1 gene or the BRCA2 gene, they're having to pay $3,000 to $4,000 out of pocket for a genetic test that should only cost $100. The reason it costs $3,000 to $4,000 is because you have to pay these monopoly royalties to a company called Myriad Genetics out of Utah that owns the patent on those genes because the U.S. Patent Office gave them that patent. It's insane, and it's going to be used against you. It's going to be used against women, especially against women who are all freaked out about whether they have this breast cancer gene. It turns out 99% of them don't have it. So you have to test 100 women to find one who has it. So you're going to spend $300,000 on this gene testing in order to find one woman who has one gene that only has about a 1% influence over her cancer outcome. That's insanity. That's a medical insanity, patent insanity, intellectual property insanity, and now the U.S. government says we can take your genes anytime we want. Yeah, we pull you over. We can just swab your mouth, and if you refuse, guess what? We're going to stick a gun in your face and make you do it, or take you to jail and then make you do it there. They can take your DNA. They can assign ownership of your DNA to someone else. Bezos, founder of Amazon.com, the vice chairman of Goldman Sachs. Gee, we didn't expect that one. Michael Evans. The former Secretary of the Treasury, Timothy Geithner. Gee, there's another big unexpected name. The general of the U.S. Army, David Petraeus. Yeah, I'm starting to see a pattern here. Eric Schmidt, the chairman of Google. There's another big name. And a lot of other names. But, gee, according to the mainstream media, all these people are going to a meeting that doesn't exist. Gee, do you think Jeff Bezos and Eric Schmidt and General Petraeus would all go to a meeting that doesn't exist? Really? No, they're going to the Bilderberg meeting, which does exist, and it's not a conspiracy theory. It is a meeting of some of the most influential and powerful and maybe power-hungry people around the world who are getting together to talk about how they're going to run the world, how they're going to influence the world. They're going to shape policy and control people and probably depopulate the planet has been one of the topics that's been talked about in the past. But certainly they want to own the planet. So probably the big topic this year, this is just my personal conjecture on the topic, is to figure out how can they crash the global debt markets in a way that transfers all the wealth from the hands of the working class into the hands of the ultra-wealthy elite, who are primarily the people at the meeting. How can they make that crash happen so that it just crashes in their direction? That's probably the big topic, but we'll see. So watch Infowars.com all week long and listen to the Alex Jones Show for updates on that. Now, big breaking news from the U.S. Supreme Court, just breaking this morning, in fact, and this is the top headline on Drudge this morning. Drudge says, ruled, take their DNA. The U.S. Supreme Court has issued a ruling that allows police across the country to take your DNA when they arrest you, to swab your DNA involuntarily on your part. They just take it from you essentially by force. In the same way that they take your fingerprints, they're now going to take your DNA. Well, why is this a big deal? And why did 4 of the justices at the U.S. Supreme Court have dissenting opinions warning about the expansion of police powers? This is a big deal because it essentially says that the U.S. government claims ownership over your DNA. Now, here's why that really matters. Number one, your DNA is unique and it's supposed to be yours. It's supposed to be private. It's part of your biology. It's part of your body. It's an intimate part of your body. Why can the government just take that from you? And if the government can take it from you, what can they do with it? Now, here's where it gets really scary. You're probably aware of the gene hypothesis of disease, right? You've heard of Angelina Jolie having a double mastectomy because she carried a gene mutation called the BRCA1 or the BRCA2 gene, BRCA1 and 2 genes that are associated with an increased risk of breast cancer. This hypothesis is wrong. Your genes do not determine your health outcome. They might have a 1% influence over your health. 99% of your health is up to you. It's based on what you eat. It's based on avoiding GMOs and avoiding fluoride and avoiding toxic chemicals and avoiding smoking and fried foods and all those things that you know are bad for you. Most of your health outcome is up to you, probably, again, 99%. But the government has been saying that the genes determine your health outcome. Now, here's the danger. What happens when they take your DNA because you're arrested, they put it in a government database, which is, of course, what they do with everything. The government loves to have databases on the people. And then they analyze your DNA and they decide, oh, you have a gene for mental illness. Then they use that information to take away your Second Amendment rights. That's right. A knock on your door. Hey, we're here to take your guns because when you were arrested last week, we ran a DNA analysis over your genome sequence, and we discovered that you have the gene for mental illness. Ha ha, the joke's on you. We're taking your guns. That's what the government is going to do with this. Or even worse, they're going to say, oh, you want to sign up for Obamacare because you want to pay 100 to 200 to even 400% more for your health insurance than you used to pay because Obamacare is raising the rates on everybody around the country? Well, guess what? You're disqualified because you have a gene for breast cancer, or you have a gene for liver cancer, or you have a gene for sickle cell anemia. If you want to get down that road, they can use this with a racial bias to take away your right to have basic health care, basic human dignity in a medical system that essentially respects no human dignity, by the way. They can use your genes against you. They can use them against you in a court of law. They can say, let's say they take your children because they don't like the fact that you're not vaccinating your children or you're homeschooling your children to give them a real education instead of the watered down government-run public education system, right? So they take your children, and then they arrest you. They get a gene swab, a DNA swab. They run the genetic code from that, and then they say, well, you have the gene of a bad parent, so you can't have your kids back. We're going to take your kids because the state knows best. We're going to take your kids and say you have a bad parenting gene. You see, this is the mythology that's so dangerous. They can say your genes are anything they want. They can say you have a gene for being a rebel. They can say you have a gene for being a patriot, which they now call terrorism. Oh, you have the gene for speaking out. That's dangerous to the government. Obama says you shouldn't listen to those voices. Maybe you should arrest those voices, put them in jail because they've got the gene for speaking out. So basically, anybody who's got genetics that are part of humanity, you know, the will to live, the will to exercise free speech, the liberty gene, you might even say, if there is such a thing. They're going to target that and remember, the Bilderberg conference is something that was called a conspiracy theory just a few years ago. They said it doesn't exist, even though it does, just like the ammo purchases by DHS. It doesn't exist. It's a conspiracy theory that they're buying ammo, but they are buying ammo, but it's not for you. It's not to be used against you. That's the explanation now. In addition to that story, we've got this story, the Al Gore backlash, why environmentalists are celebrating rising CO2 levels. And to explain that later today on the show, I brought some science flashcards with me here, right there, to explain to you a little bit about the table of elements and why carbon dioxide is a nutrient, not a pollutant. Why plants and forests and gardens need carbon dioxide. That's argon we're showing you right there. Let's find something else. Oh, hydrogen, yeah. Isn't that wonderful? We're going to go through a little bit of a science lesson, which I know you'll enjoy because it has pictures and flashcards. Just a little flashback to high school. Yeah, your favorite time, science class, right? Anyway, we're going to explain all that right here on the Alex Jones Show. And in addition to that, we're covering the other news that's breaking today. We've got 2/3 of Americans don't know if they will insure under Obamacare because, of course, Obamacare, which promised to make your health insurance more affordable, is actually making it more expensive. By far, in fact, Californians are expected to pay 146% more for their health insurance premiums under Obamacare, and other states are paying or going to pay up to 400% more for health insurance under Obamacare. Gee, it's called the Affordable Care Act, but no one can afford it. All that and much more straight ahead as we continue here on the Alex Jones Show. Stay with us. All right, it's Monday, June 3rd, 2013, here on the Alex Jones Show. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, filling in for Alex today. Alex is in the UK, getting ready to break down the Bilderberg conference. And as a journalist, a news reporter, I don't mean break it down. I don't mean like bash the doors in. No, I mean he's there to cover it. And by the way, if you want to watch the live coverage here on InfoWars, just go to Infowars.com/B, as in Bilderberg. Got it? Infowars.com/B is the website where all the live coverage is going to be happening. And Alex Jones is there. We've got other InfoWars reporters there. Richard Reeves is on location right now. Of course, Paul Joseph Watson, who lives there, is there. We've also got, I heard Luke Rudowski is there covering it from We Are Change, and many other people, so expect a lot of interesting reports to come out of the Bilderberg conference all this week, and Infowars.com is the headquarters where you're going to get the most information on that, more than any other news source in the world. And by the way, we have the official Bilderberg attendee list, and it includes, this is breaking news, this is the attendee list was just released. It includes Jeff